From the Fans Talk podcast family, this is Fans Talk Fantasy Booking. This was recorded on Wednesday, October 29, 2015. Instead of Garvin hosting, I've decided to take this show on board, give him a bit of a rest. And moving forward from episode 2, we're aiming to have one person from our squared circle of trust. But for now, I would love to welcome the host of Fans Talk TNA and a weekly regular on Fans Talk Pro Wrestling. We have Nick. Say hi, Nick.
Howdy, howdy.
Cool. If you want to be involved with this conversation and get involved, because it's all speculative, it's all just about opening ourselves up to blatant arguments or discussions if we want to be a bit nicer about it, and just trying to get people's point of view. And that's the whole thing about the Patreon community. You can pledge as little as $1 and get access to early content as well as access to our Slack community, which is a really good investment for me. It's how I got involved with this podcasting and how I started, and it's been a really good outlet for me being a wrestling fan. When you're a little bit older, it's not as acceptable to be a wrestling fan. So if you want to get involved with the community, I totally recommend it, and it'll be a lot of fun. Okay, well, this episode, our pilot, it's our first one, it's our cherry popper. I'll explain what it's about. First half, we're going to be doing fantasy booking of a future event or pay-per-view of what we know now in the network, and in the WWE universe, and now TNA universe, and the crossovers of people coming to and fro, and just seeing what we hope to see happen in the future one. So today we will be looking at Royal Rumble 2016, what we think will happen, what we hope to happen, and what's realistic. You know, it's not like we could suddenly predict Chris Benoit versus Eddie Guerrero, because it just wouldn't happen. It's not that kind of fantasy. It's more realistic fantasy, if that makes sense. And then the second half of the show, we're introducing a segment called the Monthly 5, which should be really, really fun, I think. And this month, we're looking at the top 5 heels of all time, in our view. And moving forward, we will actually have you guys choose our topic. So I'll be putting a Facebook poll on our Facebook page, so please join our group on Facebook. And yeah, we'll definitely go with anything, as silly as it may be or as cool as it may be. I just hope it'll provoke a good conversation with us anyway. All right, Royal Rumble 2016. Nick, how are you feeling about it? Are you scared?
Maybe a little bit. The last two haven't been all that wonderful. Kind of ended in schmozzy fashions and ways we didn't really appreciate. I'm hopeful because it doesn't seem like they can screw that up 3 times in a row. But I guess we'll see.
Surely they've learnt by now. That's the thing I'm thinking, is like, you have to look at the last 2 results, and okay, granted, one of them was in a very, very hostile place to have a Royal Rumble for the wrestling, fan elite, who definitely are very vocal of how they feel. You've got to think they're going for redemption, and if anything, from the last pay-per-view that's just happened, Hell in a Cell, and with Raw, it gives me hope, because it looks like they're turning a corner. So fingers crossed, they might actually book something good. So basically what we're going to do here, guys, is we're going to just have 5 matches in no order of the show, just 5 matches we would love to see at Royal Rumble, because obviously every time we think the card will be the way it is, then Hell in a Cell happened, the card didn't make sense. So we're just going to throw out some matches that make sense, in our view. So Nick, what do you got for match 1, one of your matches?
Match 1, I've got Cesaro versus Stardust in an Intercontinental Championship match. I'm betting that before Royal Rumble rolls around, we're going to circle back to Cesaro challenging for the IC title. And between now and then, I think there's a good chance that Cesaro could take it. Kevin Owens, I imagine they might want to fast track into something better. And, losing to Cesaro is no burial by any stretch of the imagination. As far as Stardust goes, they've been building a little rivalry between them for the past few weeks. Stardust sitting with Connor and Victor in the Stardust section during Cesaro's matches. That's got to come to a head at some point. So I think they could slow burn this and kind of build up to maybe this won't be the final match, but it's going to be a hallmark match, a noteworthy match in whatever feud they're going to have. So I figure IC title is a great way to do that.
Okay, I like that idea. The thing that I'm concerned about is Cesaro and Stardust have both been plagued by the pre-show thing. They get always relegated to the pre-show. So I had, for a similar match, so I'll do something comparable, because I thought these guys could feud so well together, and I think that, I don't think Kevin Owens is going to have that Intercontinental title for long. I think they're going to push him harder, and maybe not even have a feud with a title, I don't think, but he's really good with a title. So for my match for the Intercontinental title, I had Cesaro versus Rusev. Because Rusev doesn't have anything going now after finally the Rusev Zigglers ended up. And I think that those guys have really great matches and great chemistry between the two of them. So, you got your total and utter powerhouse and brute versus the guy who can run around and do uppercuts everywhere. And a great way for Cesaro to get over is against a total evil heel that no one really gets. And, he's actually one of the people that people are good at hating. Kevin Owens, good heel, but everyone loves him. I think Rusev is one of the true heels on the roster at the moment. So that's my match anyway.
Yeah, that'd be a really interesting match to see. They're both incredibly versatile wrestlers. Rusev seems to be more focused on a ground game, whereas Cesaro can go high risk very easily. But yeah, that would be a pretty interesting way to go. Two international superstars. Yeah, I could definitely see that.
Yeah, we'll see what happens. It's a matter of, do they keep Cesaro pushing, which it seems like they're giving him a push, like his recent matches have been fantastic. But you could say that for the last 3 months. He's been doing great matches. It's just not booked correctly. So we'll see how we go. Anyway, moving on. Match number 2.
I'm betting that by the time Royal Rumble rolls around, we're going to get the Bellas out of our system as far as being title picture adjacent. I think Charlotte will still have the Divas title at that point, and I think by then the WWE is finally going to give the crowd what they want, which is Sasha Banks, and I believe we're going to get a Divas Championship match between those two.
Ooh, so soon. Okay. For the Divas title, I actually had Charlotte versus Paige. I think they're going to get a few months out of this, considering the heel turn just happened. I think that, yes, Survivor Series will have... I think it'll be a series of 3. It seems like that's the thing for WWE at the moment, is that series of 3. So I think you'll get the rubber match at Royal Rumble, and then which will... Hopefully it'll leave Charlotte with the title, and then leave it for Sasha Banks for WrestleMania, because that's a big WrestleMania match they could have, is Charlotte versus Sasha Banks. And I think that's why she's staying quiet, is that they're just waiting for that timing. But we'll see. I hope it's not 3s like the Bella thing went for 3 months. Maybe the Paige thing will go for 3 months, and then maybe Becky Lynch can work with Sasha Banks on the side or something like that, because I think that Becky Lynch needs someone good to work with, and there's not that many really good people she can work with apart from Becky Lynch. Nikki's getting better. It could be good for Nikki to work with her as well. So, but I think those teams won't have too much left, but who knows? I think they're going to keep it going for a little bit longer anyway.
Yeah, I would have to imagine the teams aren't going to be as much of a thing by the time Royal Rumble rolls around. I definitely do think we're going to be getting Charlotte versus Paige within the next few months. I don't necessarily see a 3-month program for that. For whatever reason, when I think of the Divas title picture, now that Nikki's out of the way, and Charlotte still has so much to do as far as establishing herself goes, it seems to me that they might want to do like a rotation of challengers, like Paige this month. Who knows? Maybe somebody from Team Bella next month. Maybe Naomi, Natalya. So yeah, I definitely do think we're going to be getting Charlotte versus Paige. I think that would be more at Survivor Series, but yeah, I think you're spot on with getting at least one title match out of those two.
Yeah. Okay. Match number 3.
I'm thinking we're going to be getting a U.S. title match at Royal Rumble. I'm betting on Alberto Del Rio still being champion. I don't think he would have come back without A, a promise of a lot of money, and B, a decent title reign. So I foresee him holding on to that for some time to come. At some point, I think we have to get Jack Swagger in on this. And I don't think he's going to take too kindly to Zeb Coulter backing another horse instead of him. So I'm imagining Alberto Del Rio versus Jack Swagger in a U.S. Championship match in a quote-unquote last stand match. Basically a last man standing with a little bit of gimmick flavor thrown in. You know, Jack Swagger is the real American, and Del Rio and Zeb have got the Mex-America thing going on. So I can see some kind of last stand at the Alamo kind of imagery being invoked here.
That's really interesting you say that, because I had, for my match, Alberto Del Rio versus Jack Swagger in a flag match. So, same sort of thing. I think that this is all a setup for, one, a great title reign from Del Rio, and to get Jack Swagger back on Raw regularly, because he's a good worker. He's not, amazing, but a good enhancement talent and good to have around. And you would think this is all set up, one, for Del Rio to get a good title reign, probably through till WrestleMania. I would hope anyway, until the rematch against John Cena, which could be WrestleMania. I think they're really going to stretch it out. I think that the days of having a weekly challenger on Raw is gone, sadly, because that was a draw card for me on Raw. But in saying that, this week on Raw was fantastic. So I don't know. I think that this is the reintroduction of Swagger as he's fizzled into, being on Main Event and Superstars. That's where he was for quite a long time, hanging out with R-Truth. But they had a lot of matches on those shows. So I'm hoping that we can get that going and get Jack Swagger back in the picture, because he's one of the more decent workers, and the potential for Zeb Coulter to go back to Swagger and a heel turn onto Del Rio, even though I prefer Del Rio as a heel anyway. But I think that's what's happening. That's my view anyway, because I think Swagger's so much better as a heel. But especially as a worker, have a good heel that doesn't do much apart from just be, blatantly racist, which is what they basically did.
Yeah, and I think a heel can do so much with an ankle lock. Just so many ways you can heal that up and cheat to put somebody in an ankle lock. Like holding onto the ropes or whatnot. So much flavor you can add to that. Oh,
yeah. Yeah, definitely. All right, so match number 5, which leaves one title left. What do you got?
We're on match number 4, actually.
Oh, we are actually. Match number 4. I'm getting excited here.
Jump at the gun, just a tad. For the tag team titles, I'm thinking we're still going to be getting Dudleys versus New Day, but I think the Dudleys will have taken the belts at TLC, and this will be the rematch for the New Day to try and recapture those. No real gimmick attached to the match. I think it would be tough to kind of top a TLC match with the Dudleys involved. So I think it'll just be just a clean match. Well, not clean. I'm kind of envisioning maybe a handicap match where all 3 members of the New Day are able to fight. But, I think it's going to be relatively straightforward aside from that.
Okay. I had similar. I think we're looking at Dudley Boyz versus New Day, but Dudley Boyz are champion, as you predicted, versus the Usos in a 3-way. Because it's looking like the Usos are coming back very soon. So, and they're always great in the title picture, great entertainers, and I think they'll be quite funny to work against the New Day, especially where the New Day are now. You could even have heel Usos. You never know. We haven't seen that yet.
Potentially, yeah.
But I thought, they're coming back. Who else are they going to work with that's going to mean something to them? Because they're really over as a tag team. So you can't just go, here's the Lucha Dragons, go nuts, because we've seen that a million times. Mm-hmm. So throw them in that mix and potentially could build to something huge at WrestleMania. Have those three guys in a TLC at WrestleMania or a ladder match.
Ooh,
go
absolutely.
Back to old school. That would be huge, especially with Kofi doing crazy stuff. He's always great with the ladder around. So that's my view. All right, match number 5. The World Heavyweight Championship, I think, is what we've got left. If you think it'll be defended.
I think it will be. If I remember correctly, it was defended at this past Royal Rumble. Wasn't it Lesnar versus
Cena?
Yeah,
it was Cena. And Rollins. It was a 3-way. And it was awesome. It was our match of the night, from memory. Well, your guys' match of the night and my match of the night back then. It was awesome. It was when Rollins came to his own and really owned that match, and Cena upped his game, and Lesnar was... I thought he'd be horrible in it, but I remember that was fantastic. So, yes, it was defended with Seth Rollins and Cena.
Yeah, so I believe Seth Rollins is still going to be champion at this point, and I still believe that Roman Reigns is still going to be gunning for him. He's currently the number 1 contender heading into Survivor Series. I highly doubt that Roman Reigns is going to get a clean shot at Rollins, and I think that's going to persist through the upcoming months leading to Royal Rumble. Excuse me. I don't necessarily know if this is where we're going to be getting the last match between the two, because I'm still kind of attached to the theory that they want to have a Shield triple threat match at Mania, and having Reigns be at least title adjacent throughout this whole period on the road to WrestleMania, I think that'll be a good way to make that happen.
Yeah, okay. You again, we're similar, but not quite. So with how everything's lined up, and I can tell that there's either two possibilities that are going to happen this month at Survivor Series with Roman Reigns and Seth Rollins, and it doesn't involve Roman Reigns winning the title. Or if it does. So what I've actually put down is Seth Rollins versus Roman Reigns versus Dean Ambrose for the World Heavyweight Championship. As Roman Reigns as the World Heavyweight Champion. And for Seth Rollins to win. Now, I would honestly predict this could even open the night. And you have Roman Reigns as a sudden appearance to go into the last final floor. I think that Dean Ambrose and Reigns together it's been really good for them, but it's time for them to split up. They don't need each other anymore. They're both decent singles competitors. I'd probably rate Ambrose over Reigns, but I think we'll see that triple threat then. And I think triple threats being done. I'm totally done with them at WrestleMania main events. I think we need to just go back to a great single story, 25 minutes, go nuts. I think that after the lovely match with Bautista, Orton, and Daniel Bryan, that was just horrendous. There's only so much that Daniel Bryan could have done then, and he was already pretty injured at that point.
Yeah.
So, it was just a kick fest. That's all I remember seeing from him, and just laughing. It's like he doesn't do anything but kick. There was nothing. I don't remember him punching anyone, But I think we'll see this triple threat early. I think they'll pull the trigger early in the quest for redemption of a Royal Rumble, because I think the uproar that they've had over what they had to do last year with Reigns winning the Rumble and then having to go into Fastlane against Bryan because the people demanded it. They must have really screwed up their program, what they had planned. So I think we'll see it early. I think we'll see, it'll be strong. It has to be strong because it's, for me, this is the second best pay-per-view in their calendar. For nostalgic purposes, and generally in history, there's been some really great things come out of it. So I hope we'll see that.
Yeah, I definitely get where you're coming from. Like, the whole triple threat angle at WrestleMania main events is kind of... I don't necessarily know if it's played out, but it's starting to get there. Like you mentioned, with Daniel Bryan, Orton, and Batista. And then we wound up getting one when Rollins cashed in on Lesnar and Reigns and made that a triple threat. So I definitely see where you're coming from, but I think we can still get that at Mania. Not necessarily as the main event. They'll probably book it as one of the multiple main events, but it's not going to be the main event, I don't think.
The first ever triple main event or something they'll do. I think that's where it is. I hope it is, but we will see. I think time will tell, and I think at the end of Survivor Series we'll have a pretty clear picture. And the only other scary thought with this whole thing is Sheamus. And where that cash-in is going to happen, because one time's running out. I don't think they'll do it again at WrestleMania, because it's just, there's not going to be any dramatic impact, or people will just go, I'm never watching WWE again if he interferes and wins. If he loses, it'll be great because we don't have to worry about it anymore. So
yeah, I'm betting on him losing, and I think it'll happen before Royal Rumble. I think it'll happen either at Survivor Series or at TLC.
Well, that's what I'm thinking as well. I hope so. You know, you can't have a guy who's doing pre-shows become the World Heavyweight Championship. And no one cares for him. Like, he's a bad heel. His presentation is bad. His matches are okay. They're not great. He's really set himself up to lose. I think his gimmick has really killed him. Just this whole... the weird beard with ponytails in it. No, it doesn't make any sense to me. And he needs to go back to the drawing board. Even faced Sheamus when he was just working every week was better than this. I don't dig it at all.
Yeah, if he was more of a bully and just dropped this whole respect the Hawk thing, like keep the mohawk and the beard, the braids and the beard, but go back to being what he was during his previous heel run, and essentially during his subsequent face run that led into this one. Just be a bully.
Yeah,
beat the crap out of guys. He started off so well, like talking about how none of the crowd favorites deserve to be here. They're small guys that I'm bigger. Why not? I'm better than them. Why don't you people love me? Yeah, he's just really lost his way this whole time. I don't think he should be World Heavyweight Champion under these sorts of circumstances.
The only person I can see kind of building him, and it's funny, it's a new guy, would be Kevin Owens, but Kevin Owens would have to go more face-ish, which doesn't suit him anyway. It's like, I can't think of anyone who can build him well. There's no one who you want to take away from a really good program to work with him, because he's lost his whole credibility through this whole reinvention since his return. I just haven't been sold by him at all. Not convinced. Okay, so the Royal Rumble. Nick, how are you feeling about the Royal Rumble? Are you excited? Are you scared? Are you thinking this will be good, or are you thinking this will be horrendously bad?
I'm thinking it'll be at least approaching good. I'm betting on it being better than the last two. Yeah, that's about all I can say. Like you said earlier, they have to have learned at some point that you need to throw the crowd a bone with at least one return. Like, don't make the final spot Rey Mysterio when Daniel Bryan hasn't entered the match yet. And, like, don't have Batista win it when Daniel Bryan is being pushed so hard as an underdog for the championship. Don't push Roman Reigns when it's very clear that we want somebody else. They've got to start throwing folks a bone in order to, kind of alleviate the tension.
Yeah. So who did you... Let's look at this before we say our winners. Guest appearances. Or returns, of people that you don't necessarily think will win, but will make a big return, a great appearance.
Mm-hmm. I'm betting on RVD getting a Rumble spot. It just seems like it's been a while since we've seen him. He is still wrestling. This would be a good way to kind of get folks excited about the Rumble, because any time he's come back over the years, he's always gotten a great response. In recent years, I'm not exactly sure why, because he's kind of lost a step or two, but the excitement's still there. So that would be a great way for people to remember the Rumble fondly. I'm also predicting Funaki.
Ooh, that's good. I like that.
Yeah, there's been a lot more presence from and about him on WWE social media, largely from individual wrestlers, but I think bringing on Funaki could potentially be a good way to bring Hideo Itami back and to the main roster on a more permanent basis. It's a little soon for Itami to come back right after Funaki makes an appearance, because he is still injured. We don't know how close he is to recovering fully, but I'm thinking maybe Funaki makes semi-regular appearances on Raws and SmackDowns, just as kind of a I don't know if we want to throw the Santino label and roll at him, but just for random backstage appearances. And one of the heels on the roster gets fed up. So they start picking out Funaki and beating him up. And maybe you have a match in there somewhere, I don't know. But eventually Itami comes up to save his friend and starts a main roster feud with that guy. So if nothing else, it'd be a good way to reintroduce Itami to the audience. One final return, I'm thinking that if all goes well with this third doctor visit, I'm thinking this would be a great spot for Daniel Bryan to come back in.
Yep. It's pretty much what I thought. But my returns, or guest appearances. So I had Daniel Bryan, as you did. I also had Jushin Thunder Liger make an appearance. After how successful he was at NXT Brooklyn, I think that why not throw him in there? We've had the Boogeyman go in recently. We've had DDP come in. I think this would be really good for him and a really good sign of respect to him as well.
Absolutely.
And I hope so as well. One I'm not looking forward to, Jericho. I think Jericho will definitely be in there. And he usually works quite a lot in it. Like some of the recent ones in, let's say, the last 5 years Jericho's been in, he's worked 30 minutes. So he'll be there. He'll always be there.
Yeah, probably.
I thought because it's gone relatively quiet from Hideo Itami, I honestly thought he would jump in on this one as well. But who knows? And my big one, I honestly think Kurt Angle will make an appearance as well.
Really?
Yeah, I think with the way that TNA has been going, you are the TNA expert. I can only look from someone who doesn't watch the product and just hear about the management problems and things like that. So I'm thinking, Kurt Angle will make an appearance. It'll be like what Bubba did this year. It will be huge. It'll be massive pop, and he won't get far, but he'll show his presence.
Yeah, that would be spectacular if it happened. I think there's a pretty big barrier to entry for him, and that's passing the physical.
If DDP can do it, though.
Well, I mean, DDP's arguably in the best shape of his life. Kurt Angle, he's got a lot of neck injuries. Like, that neck is more reinforced than any building I could mention. His recent work in TNA has been excellent. I think he's still just as good as he ever was. But, the wellness program, the wellness policy is such a thing in the WWE. And I'm not saying, Angle's shooting up or taking drugs in order to stay in the ring, but there's a physical bar to entry that I'm not sure the WWE would allow Angle to pass, just given all the injuries he suffered.
Sure. Maybe it'll be a part-timer thing or just that appearance. I don't know if we'll get much longevity out of it because I don't know. Obviously, no one knows how Kurt's feeling about continue working. He's getting to that age where he can look at retiring and be pretty happy with his career as well. So I just thought as a guest appearance, that'd be a really good one to see. Attitude Era guys, I was really struggling to think of someone who could make a return and make it good to see, if that makes sense. I can't think of anyone. I think they're going to move forward. Unless the Godfather does another thing again, which I'm totally cool with because he brings the hog train. But, or maybe Val Venus. We haven't seen him in a long, long time, but I don't even know if, one, he's alive, and two, if he's in shape. So,
I kind of wonder if Jake the Snake would be a good option.
Since he's still wrestling, isn't he?
Yeah. Mm-hmm. I don't know. He had a Rumble spot at some point. I don't remember how many years it's been. I'm looking it up.
That's interesting, but you could say the same about Terry Funk.
Oh, yeah, but that dude's 70 now.
Yeah, but he recently just took a fireball in one of his matches.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
The guy's
it
nuts.
was billed as his last match ever, but I think Terry Funk has had a few of those, so maybe.
Look, I think it would be a really good spot for Jake the Snake. It seems like, they get these really good little deals going to promote things, like DDP came out wearing his DDP yoga shirt, and then this movie of Jake the Snake is going to be coming out and has been screened everywhere and highly promoted. Maybe that's a good spot. Maybe that's a good idea. I wouldn't be against it, but I wouldn't think more than 2 minutes in there, and he gets to do something cool with the snake. But being PG, it's kind of restrictive as well.
Oh, wait. He hasn't had a Rumble spot. It was heavily rumored for the last couple of years, but no, he didn't actually get in there.
Oh, okay. Maybe we'll see it then. Let's hope. For the sake of him, he's a Hall of Famer, and he is the total face of rehabilitation and turning your life around, and everything that WWE wants to support is getting your life back on track. So it's a good spot.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. And who did you pick for your winner?
In the spirit of the WWE picking somebody that the fans wouldn't immediately shit all over, and kind of to maintain that little theory I mentioned earlier of the Shield triple threat at Mania, I'm thinking Dean Ambrose will win.
Ooh, okay. That's interesting. I went a little bit different. I thought they need to give someone so strong, they don't want to gamble with it, they need a sure thing. That's what I thought. And I honestly think this is going to be a massive full circle, and we're going to see Brock Lesnar versus Seth Rollins at WrestleMania. So I think Brock Lesnar will win the Royal Rumble.
Ooh.
Because no one will be able to say much about that. Everyone will be happy with that. You'll have Daniel Bryan return. He'll almost win. I think Brock Lesnar will throw him out, which could set Daniel Bryan up for a really good run with the US title or something like that. He doesn't have to have a title, but for the full circle of story, Brock Lesnar should win.
Yeah, that would be a pretty excellent decision as well.
It makes so much sense. He can keep doing his part-timer thing because he's got a guaranteed shot at WrestleMania. It gives subscriptions to skyrocket and keep them going as well from Royal Rumble all the way through to WrestleMania at least. So that's 3 months of guaranteed money.
Mm-hmm.
It makes sense in a business sense. So, yeah, pro Brock Lesnar. I hope he disappears until then. I don't think I want to hear from him. I don't want to hear a whisper. I want it totally, because as far as I can tell from everything I've read online, he's out. He's done for the year. So, great time to come back. Royal Rumble. Let's do it.
Yeah, it would be.
Give plenty of time for Seth Rollins to work with Reigns, and then potentially Ambrose, and then it clears it up for, hopefully, what we'll see. So, there we go. Okay, well, that was our fantasy booking for Royal Rumble 2016. I hope you liked it. Feel free to share your thoughts on our Facebook page or jump on Patreon. You can subscribe and pledge as little as $1 to get access to our Slack community, as well as a whole heap of other lists. So head to patreon.com/fans talk. Okay, moving on to our next segment. We do have our monthly 5. Ooh, I'm excited for this. Now, our first one, we've had a bit of discussion on our Slack community of what we should do a countdown of, and this was just recommended to do on Fans Talk Pro Wrestling, but since this show came about, I pretty much jumped in and stole it. This whole monthly 5 is a blatant rip-off of a million different other podcasts, but to keep the spirit of community going, we're hopefully going to have someone from our squared circle of trust jump on every week. So, our first monthly 5, we're opening it up with a pretty big one, I think, but I think there's going to be some similarities in our list. We're going to be doing top 5 heels of all time. How are you feeling about this, Nick? How did you go getting your list together?
It was interesting for me because I didn't go back to the 80s and 90s. That's not when I was watching. I've only been watching wrestling for about 5 or 6 years now. And I have gone back and seen some of the good stuff, like Flair and the Four Horsemen and all that. But that's not really what I'm familiar with. So everybody I'm naming are guys that have had some of their best stuff in the last 6 or 7 years or so.
Okay.
Stuff that I have personally watched or was just... it was just long enough ago that it wasn't too long before I started watching.
Okay, so mine's going to be a little bit different in that respect. I've been watching wrestling. I figured it out. I've been watching wrestling since 1995, when I was 6 years old. So I've got a whole lot of memory that goes through that. And I did, at that time, I used to go down to the video store and rent, VCRs of early pay-per-views that, no one had rent. And I'd get, 6 of them for a week and go through them all. And, that was the thing that I loved to do. On school holidays or when it was raining or something like that. So what we're going to do is we're going to do our top 5 and then we're going to give ourselves a couple of mentions that were just outside. I'm not going to give us 5 because that means we're basically doing a top 10. So I'm going to give us 3 people that really deserve to be there but didn't quite make the cut. All right, let's start it off. Number 5, who have you got?
My number 5 is Eric Young from TNA. Currently, I think he's the best heel going there. He's a better Flair than Flair ever was in TNA. Flair wasn't exactly Flair in his prime when he was in TNA.
True.
Still had some of it going. He was a good manager and a good faction leader for Fortune, but it wasn't Flair and the Horsemen. Speaking of factions, Eric Young's World Elite faction, I thought that was great, and it should have done a lot better than it wound up doing. But it was so different from what he'd been doing before, which was Scaredy Cat Eric, jumping at his own shadow, and then Superhero Eric. It was very much sort of kid-friendly stuff, almost. But then when he went and formed World Elite, his personality just shifted almost 180 degrees, and he was cold, calculating, ruthless. Just the sort of guy that you would imagine heading up like a multinational evil conglomerate. So, and with the current stuff he's done, like I said, very Flair-esque. Just the way he's constantly harping on how great he is. He's a world-class athlete, he's a world-class wrestler, he's a world-class maniac. And he's borrowing so heavily from Flair's greatest stuff that he just makes it his own, and it's pretty great to watch.
Yeah, okay. Well, with Eric Young, he had a really good run over in New Japan, I think, as well. Or All Japan, one of the two. Doing the same gimmick, pretty much. So that's an interesting pick. Now, for me, I don't have any TNA stuff, because we don't get TNA over here, so... I've read about a lot of talent, but a lot of the talent I've read about is crossovers from previously WWE or WCW. So, alright, my number 5 is a wrestler. He is a promoter and all-round ultimate bad guy. I went with Vince McMahon as my number 5. Leader of the corporation, went with one of the best feuds, I think, that went on for such a long period of time. It had so many intricacies, and one of the best storylines I think we've seen in the WWE with him versus Steve Austin in the Attitude Era. He was so good at making the crowd hate him. He was the man that everyone had in their job that you just wanted to punch in the face. I think that he just nailed it. He figured out every single way, and just his simple, telling the crowd to shut up, and his vulgarity in his voice. And when he was fighting, he was a coward. He got so many people to fight for him. Umaga, I remember, was his champion, who ended up, I think, losing to Santino in a Raw. But he's always been this guy who's had a million people around him to protect him, the ultimate bad guy in that respect. But I couldn't give him a number one or even higher than this because obviously he's not a wrestler. He can wrestle, he has done some pretty awesome matches, but still not worthy of going higher than that. So I'm going with number 5 for Vince McMahon.
Makes a lot of sense.
Yeah. All right, number 4. Who have you got?
I'm actually giving number 4 to Seth Rollins. And I had to think about that a lot. But I wound up giving it to him because, the way he broke up the Shield. I don't think anybody really expected it at the moment that he did it. Because the Shield had never been better. They had never been in a stronger position. They'd just gone over Evolution.
And they were just face. They just turned face.
Mm-hmm.
It was, and they were like, I looked at it and I'm like, business sense, you guys are crazy. You've just cost yourself so much merch. The Shield's gone. It's over. You can never recreate it. No faction has been successfully recreated ever. Great heel. I think that when they did, it was a bad move. But anyway, yes, keep going on your rant.
Yeah, I think just the reaction that we got from Ambrose when Rollins hit Reigns with that chair, just that look of pure betrayal on his face, that really sold it for me. And, since then, he's been a lot more conventional with his heel tactics. The cowardly heel, ducking fights left and right. When he's backed into a corner, he'll start machoing it up, and he'll start showing some false bravado to show that he's no chicken, he's the man. It's been fairly conventional stuff, but he's committed to it so well, and he still gets booed by a very large portion of the audience. A super majority of them, in fact. Despite the fact that his moveset, it's pretty much designed to be that of the ultimate babyface. It's so high-flying and it's got such an aerial nature that you associate it with guys like Rey Mysterio, the ultimate underdog, or in more modern terms, a guy like Adrian Neville or Kalisto. Guys that you just can't help but enjoy and cheer for because they're doing such amazing stuff. Seth Rollins does a lot of that, but he's just such an arrogant jerk that you can't help but hate him.
I think I would agree with your number 4 so much more if he wasn't trying to forever make my mummy and daddy, Stephanie and Triple H proud. And, which is like, that's an underdog thing to do. He's always trying to prove himself and be this guy to people, where a heel traditionally is independent, or it's with his bad guy next to him, and they do bad things together. But he's just trying to prove himself all the time. I think he is a great heel, and he's one of the only heels going that's actually really heely. I know, I'm just creating words as I go, but yeah, I think it's a good one. I don't know if it's deserving of a top 5 of all time, or in your case, in the past 7 years. In saying that, though, I do look at the fact that we haven't had that many great heels in the past 7 years. But
yeah.
So we've had some decent ones, some ones that aren't heels anymore, so it's hard to look back. If you wanted to look in the respective of being, great heels, I'll look at this afterwards because I don't want to potentially spoil what you've got coming. I don't know. I think that everything he does, apart from this whole, got to prove myself to the authority because, I'm the man and I have to be told that all the time, which is heelish, but now I have to go and prove myself. It should be, we're going to protect our man, and he's barely, like, you have to really work really hard to get a shot at him because he is the man. That's how it should be, and it should be a proud and vocal thing instead of every time the pressure's on, you need to defend your title against some awesome guy. Anyway, we'll see. All right, let's move on to my number 4. This guy I've never seen as a babyface. He's always been a heel. He's been across WCW into WWE and worked for quite a long time and some really iconic matches for good and for bad. I have got William Regal as my number 4.
He's a
oh man, this guy his moveset was heel. He introduced the European uppercut to be famous. His facial expressions, he's come out on Raw in lingerie. He's had the biggest, one of the most horrible matches in WCW history with Bill Goldberg. It was a 12-minute match, and it was absolutely horrible. If you want to see something bad, look that one up. But this guy was just, he knew how to work it. He knew how to be so horrible. And, the thing is, he's actually known to be a shooter wrestler as well. Beating people for real into submission if they're not doing what he liked. Which really fed on his heel gimmick. And, oh man, this guy was just so good at knowing how to be a heel. And knowing that anything that started to get popular, he would just stop doing it. And he would exploit that people knew that they liked it and went completely against it. Never been a babyface, never would be a babyface until he's now running NXT. So, go for William Regal, number 4.
Yeah, I really enjoy that man's psychology. Listening to him on commentary during the early days of the rebooted NXT, just hearing that man's mind for the business and how he could explain away even the most ridiculous of holds as something lethal and threatening and something that you don't want to be put in. I really enjoy that. And listening to him talk, like on The Art of Wrestling when he did a couple episodes there, how he would fashion a match and throw in a little bit of stuff for everybody with a smile and a wink to the camera. But then, like you said, if he's working heel and something starts getting over, he recognizes that, he adjusts it, and he doesn't do it again. Like, it's just an utter professional in just about every way that I can think of.
Oh, yeah. I really rated him highly, even though when I saw him as a kid, I hated him so much. And it got to the point where they were so good at his heel thing that they made his music audibly not appealing. Like, it sounded horrible. His, epic classical horn thing going on. It was just like, oh, God, he's out again. Oh, no. And it was perfect for kids to hate him. He was perfect for adults to hate him. He was just great. And I remember back in when the European title existed, and he had, defending the European Union, I think it was. And he was just utterly fantastic, blatantly racist at times, but still very fun to listen to. So that was my number 4. Now number 3, we're getting closer to the business end. Who have you got, Nick?
I've got another TNA guy there, and it's Bobby Roode. When he's a heel, there's nobody that I want to punch in the mouth more. It just, the smugness, the arrogance, and what makes it worse is that I know he can back up everything he does and says with tremendous skill. He's a top-notch wrestler. There is just such a technicality to everything he does. Just a simple suplex, he does that better than 90% of anybody in the wrestling industry. He's just such a consummate worker, and the fact that it took as long as it did for him to get his first world title, it's almost criminal if it wasn't for the fact that he had such an illustrious tag team career as well. I think, he's just, like the things you said about William Regal as a villain, some of that applies to Bobby Roode as well, because there are very few more effective heels in TNA that you can name that, you just can't help but hate.
Yeah, look, I haven't seen enough of his work to comment. I've heard a lot of things of him being that iconic heel and being a great worker, and as well as someone kind of like a Bray Wyatt of TNA. You know, you go through him and you get, you know, you can then go to the next level sort of thing, or push on and be the face. But yeah, I unfortunately I can't comment. But Bobby Roode, there you go, guys. Look him up. For my number 3, the Ultimate Cheater. He was just hilarious. I remember seeing him, I think it was Royal Rumble 92. And this was on a VHS that I got. And when he entered, which people have borrowed, mainly The Miz, and he went into the ring, entered the Royal Rumble, then jumped under the bottom rope, and then hid under the mat for 40 minutes. And then came out and almost win the Royal Rumble. This guy was hilarious, and now is one of the better commentators of the last 10, 15 years. I've got Jerry Lawler. So, fantastic. You know, so much fun to watch and a big cheat. And when he wants to be aggressive, he can really flip that coin from being the begging for mercy or, you know, running away, and then flip the coin and be crazy aggressive and just non-stop pain. So yeah, I really loved his work. And then, you know, as a color commentator, as a heel commentator, he's done a lot better job. Not so much now, but back when it was him and JR, he was fantastic as a heel commentator as well. So, and, you know, he's really entertaining as well. So he had a lot of elements going for him. And I think that a lot of talent really benefited from that. And now he's only doing SmackDown and pay-per-views. So just phasing out slowly, it looks like, for him.
Yeah.
But yeah.
I've heard all of that from so many people about his heel work and just how impactful it is. And the more I hear about it, the more I feel like eventually I've got to go back and watch that, because I'm only familiar with his face stuff. Like when Andy Kaufman was a thing and they had the feud, and a couple of other moments from his Memphis days. But yeah, everything I've heard echoes what you're saying exactly. Easily justifiable on this list.
Yeah, look at jump on the network. I'm sure most people who watch this have the network for the pay-per-view's sake. Look back at the old Royal Rumbles when he was still wrestling in the Royal Rumbles. He was so good in those Rumbles, and King of the Rings as well. So, yeah, fantastic. All right, 2 more to go. Nick, your number 2.
My number 2 comes from New Japan, more specifically Pro Wrestling Noah right now, and that's Minoru Suzuki. If you're not familiar with him, he's basically, in terms of combat sport, he's done it all. He helped found an organization called Pancrase, which is one of the first MMA organizations ever formed. And I believe it's still going to this day. But he's got a winning record there. He's essentially a legitimate badass. One of the only people to ever beat Ken Shamrock twice.
Yeah, that's right. Wow.
Yeah, and just in terms of pro wrestling, like, I don't speak a lick of Japanese. But all I need to do is look into his eyes to know that he'd love nothing more than to break my legs in any number of submission holds. That man simply exudes bad guy. In his first days back in New Japan, he immediately stole away a faction and remade it into his own completely terrifying image. He forced Shinsuke Nakamura, then the IWGP Intercontinental Champion, the second highest champion in that company. He forced him into a match where Nakamura would have to join Suzuki's faction if he lost. And not only was he champion, but Nakamura was also the head of his own rather prominent faction, Chaos, at the time. So, if he's got enough stroke that he can make that happen, and he's that bad of a man to make it look like this top guy could become his underling, like that's a legitimate badass. And it certainly doesn't hurt that he was trained by Karl Gotch, like the OG of Japanese wrestling.
Yeah, look, for me, I've seen lots of New Japan wrestling. I haven't seen the shows. Obviously, with the commentary being in Japanese, it's hard to grasp the story. So I sort of go by match. But With Suzuki, the one thing that I first realised when I saw him was his ability to tell that story regardless of language. He can show you that he is such a bad guy. He will do anything to win, and he will hurt you in the most horrible ways in that ring. And it looked like he was a shooter. Like he really wanted to just hurt you, no matter if you're wrestling or in MMA. I just want to hurt you. So, yeah, with his factions and that presence, I think that was the thing that really grasped me, that he had that presence before you even start the match, that he is the bad guy there. And you don't want to go near him. He will hurt you badly. He will put you out and he won't care. So, great pick. I didn't go New Japan. I kept it all very WWE, WCW. So, you've had a very diverse list for the recent era. I do like it. For my number 2, I had a guy who's responsible for many iconic matches, for doing some crazy heel things in horrible situations, for provoking anarchy, and for saying what he wants, which I really respected. I have the late, great Roddy Piper. This guy was just unbelievable. I remember there was... I don't know if it was WWE or WCW. It was quite a long time ago, but he got put in a boxing match against another wrestler on a wrestling show. They put the boxing gloves on. They went one round, which didn't go for more than 30 seconds. Then they go to their corners. And I think it was Arn Anderson who was his trainer, who actually suits that role. You could put him in a film as being a boxing trainer. It kind of suits him. And sprays some pepper spray on the gloves. And then... and then they go out and they do another round, and it was just so bad, but it was so good. He did the best of whatever he was given, and most of the time with his promos and being that horrible person, some of the best matches of all time wouldn't have happened without Roddy Piper. You know, WrestleMania, simple as that. This guy was huge. And the thing is, I think that with great heels that have done great heel things, they don't get the credit they truly deserve. Great example, the late great Dusty Rhodes, fantastic icon. Everyone respects him. There was a massive thing for him when he passed away, but when Piper passed away, it was a one-show thing, and that was it. And I believe that Piper was just as iconic and just as big as Dusty Rhodes, and that pisses me off, because I think that Piper was huge, and he did do a lot for the business when he went into WCW, and then when he came back to WWE and he had his last match, was all really big things, and I don't think he deserved the respect that he got. But great heel, definitely number 2 for me. Did some great things over the years, so kudos to you, Roddy Piper.
Yeah, I think Piper got a lot. He didn't get as much recognition from the WWE as he probably should have. But I think he got more of a broader recognition when he passed. Like I noticed a lot of non-wrestling fan friends of mine take note of Roddy Piper, and like that made news headlines.
Yeah, it was actually on the front of our main news website here in Australia when Ronda Rousey, when she won her fight in stupid amount of seconds, that was the first thing she did, was dedicate the fight to Roddy Piper. That got front page news, so that was cool. But yeah, in respect to the WWE universe, they really it was so small. It was really minor. It just didn't make any sense in comparison, because it wasn't that long between Dusty passing away and when Piper passed away. It made it look so small, because obviously Dusty towards the end had a massive impact with NXT and the company. He was doing great things there, but you still got to give credit where credit's due, don't you?
Yeah. Mm-hmm. I'm definitely with you.
Okay. All right. This is the big one. And I don't think we're going to have the same number 1, and I originally thought we would. But I want to hear it, Nick. What have you got? Number 1.
I'm giving my number 1 to Kevin Owens. In the WWE, he hasn't had a lot of time to solidify himself as that sort of caliber of heel. But even in his short time in the WWE, he instantly marked himself as a bad man. He basically walked in, got his nose broken in his first match, still won and destroyed the guy, and then I think it was his very next match. No, it was before that. The same night when Sami Zayn had his big moment and he became champion. Kevin Owens went into the ring. He was the first guy into that ring, and he gave Sami Zayn the biggest hug. And then they're walking out together, and Owens blasts him and power bombs him into the apron. Just your first night there, and you make that big an impact. Yeah. And his first night on the main roster. His first match against John Cena, and he won. He wrecked Cena.
And clean.
Yeah.
Which I kind of think is great that he won clean because it shows his strength, but you kind of think as a heel you want to see him do something cheaty. He didn't really do anything that cheaty that match. I'm not saying it was a bad match, it was awesome. But, still awesome though. This guy's come in and he was huge. Days as Kevin Steen,
Exactly,
YouTube that. Oh my God, he's so good. I listened to a podcast with him and Colt Cabana, when he was still Kevin Steen and still doing the ROH circuit. And man, he's just always been bitter. And you get that. And it's like he just wants a job for his family and he doesn't care what he has to do. He doesn't care. And that's the persona he has when he's being his heel, is he just doesn't care. He'll beat you up, whatever. I get paid. He's a prize fighter. And it just works so well. So that's a great pick, especially for the modern era.
Yeah, that's a huge reason why I chose him, is just because he took those words that Stone Cold told him when he was just getting into the business. Never stop talking. And he made that his mantra all throughout his career. And he's just the embodiment of what Stone Cold was, as far as what sort of character you are. There are some guys that become the character that they are given or that they choose for themselves, but they're totally different from that in their everyday lives. Stone Cold, though, he always talked about... Well, Steve Austin always talked about the Stone Cold persona just being him, but turn it to 11. Yeah. Kevin Owens kind of embodies that. He's not any different from his everyday persona and the Kevin Owens persona. He's not walking around giving people an eye rake on the street, but, is basically the same guy. And you don't get any of the nonsense motivations for being a heel, like, I turn because I hate you, or you people aren't worthy of my presence. It's just, he's just a ruthless man, like you said, looking out for his own, taking care of his family. It's a very easy motivation to understand, but it still doesn't excuse the heinous things that he will do in order to provide for his family. Yeah, and it's kind of like he's kind of not nowhere near as much of, I'm not saying he's a jerk, but he's a private person. He doesn't like people. It's like Brock Lesnar, he puts that whole idea out. I don't like people. I like to beat people up. I like to get paid, and I like to go home. And that's totally respectable, so you can respect him as a heel, but then you can also hate him when he cheats. And he hasn't really cheated that much yet. He's just turning into the guy when it gets too hard, he walks away. But I think we've got some really great things to come from him, and I think in the next year we'll see him more in the title picture and where he deserves. I saw, this past week on Raw, that epic stare down between him and Roman Reigns, and the crowd lost it. It was huge. Yeah. That's something to look forward to, and I think they'll save that. But that's going to be big, and I think that's going to be massive because they both have respect as their own positions, as one being a very cut clean babyface, and then you've got the ultra bad heel. So, I think we've got great things to come from Owens. I think that the best days are to come, and definite future Hall of Famer for me. Absolutely. Now, mine is the obvious choice. This guy has been champion more times than I can count. That's a lie. I can count. He's a 16-time world champ. We've got Ric Flair. The guy's done everything. He's been the ultimate heel. Even when he was really old in Evolution, he was still awesome at being bad. You go further back, the begging, the low blows, every little bit of cheating and saying things to annoy people, living the rich lifestyle. And some of his old promos were fantastic about, this Rolex is worth more than you make in a year. And, just a total absolute asshole.
I can imagine going into a working class town when he was working the territories and saying stuff like that. He would have been chased out of towns back then. Like, he was such a horrible person and makes the ultimate heel. Could work the crowd well, and a great wrestler as well for his time, for that older style. Even one of his better matches, I really loved the send-off of WCW when it was Sting versus Flair to end Nitro Forever. That was a really good match, and it really showed how even when he's then getting on and you can go against Sting and really show that difference between a babyface and a heel and work it perfectly. So a legend, absolute legend. Hopefully I hope he gets into a coaching role or something in regards to developing people's vocal talents and mic talents. You know, that would be a really good spot for him, because it doesn't seem like he does much apart from turn up on Raw to support his daughter. You know, teach people how to be good heels. You know, there's just a fountain of heel knowledge there. But, you know, obviously he's made plenty of money over the years and lost plenty of money through divorces and stuff. But I hope to see him shine through and be there. But again, he's old. He could just retire because he's sick of working. It's fair enough for him as well. So, Ric Flair for my number one. But two different contrasts there in the monthly five. We're not always going to agree. Obviously, Nick has a totally different view to me because he's only been watching wrestling for a short period of time. So, you know, I've almost been watching wrestling for 20 years. I only realised when I looked back and counted the years. And that is really scary. And yes, I'm old. So, yeah, I've got honourable mentions now, Nick. Who have you got for your honourable mentions? Who just missed out, or, you know, you thought could go in there, but for other reasons they couldn't get in your list?
You know, I think I've got two names that really stand out to me, and they're both TNA talents, so sorry. But Ethan Carter III, the now former World Heavyweight Champion, he's got that arrogance, that smugness, and, you know, he's on an undefeated streak ever since he walked into the doors of TNA. He hasn't been pinned, he hasn't been submitted, and he will let you know that at every turn. I'm really not certain why I didn't include him on this list, to be honest, because, again, so arrogant, so assured, so untouchable. Up until recently, he was being protected by, you know, Aunt D, Dixie Carter, the nephew of the owner of the company, basically been raised with a silver spoon in his mouth. A character that is calculated to make anyone just pure straight hate him. And he's done well for himself. So he very easily could have made it onto this list. It's just, yeah, top five. That's hard, even for me, with who hasn't been watching as long as a lot of people have.
Yeah, look, it's definitely a testing thing, isn't it? Honourable mentions for me, being a little bit more open with this one, but a guy who was a babyface in one country and a heel in the other and did it perfectly, Bret Hart. Perfect balance. Guy was fantastic and a great technician in the ring as well. Probably one of the best of all time, if not the best, at in-ring work. I also had Jake the Snake Roberts. Horrible wrestler, great heel. You know, wasn't that great. Didn't know how to do very much, but just worked his gimmick really well. And for the modern era, I don't know why I didn't have him in my list, because I think that a guy can go for as long as he is on top and not get in my top five is CM Punk. You know, the guy was champ for 434 days as a heel for 90% of it. There was only 2 feuds I think he had where he was face. Oh no, 1, maybe 2. One was against Jericho at WrestleMania 27. Where that was a great match, horrible story. But the guy was a great heel, could insult any city, no problem. And obviously towards the end of his run in WWE, when his care factor got lower and lower and lower, he was such a better heel. Not to mention doing an absolute, I don't know if it was scripted, I don't think we'll ever know, but the old school pipe bomb I don't know. That was just a huge moment. One of the more iconic moments of the past 10 years in wrestling, of just telling it how it is and telling everyone why they're stupid. The guy was great, and not to mention how amazing his work was in the ring. So,
yeah, I actually really enjoyed his Straight Edge Society stuff. Like,
oh yeah,
just his feud with Mysterio and the whole mask and singing "Happy Birthday" to Mysterio's daughter, like all of that. That was gold to me.
Oh yeah, and what was it? What Royal Rumble was it? It was the 40-man, I think, the one where Gilberto won, and he had his faction with him, the Nexus, and they cleared out everyone for the first 20 minutes, like one person to come in and get thrown out. And that lasted for quite a while, and it was so different. It was great leader, great faction leader, and, sad to see him go, but hearing from all of his justifications, I can see why he did. Obviously, he didn't enjoy it anymore. You can't force someone to do something they don't want to do.
Yeah.
And I think if he ever does get it in UFC for a short while, I don't see it happening for longer than a year of him, or 2 years of him fighting, because he's 37. So, I don't want to see another Kem Shamrock fight. I just don't want to see that. But the guy's still going to sell lots. He's still going to be around. I don't want to say he'll ever go back to WWE, but I don't think he would. I think he's that kind of stubborn that he probably wouldn't. But who knows? It might be after Vince passes away. You never know.
That would be one of those Warrior or Sammartino kind of things. There's got to be a lot of time for that water to pass under the bridge, I think.
Oh, and we got to get past the lawsuit that's going on as well.
Yeah, that as well.
Yeah. So, but I think really close to being in that top 5. But obviously, looking at my list versus yours, mine's very much looking at a older school, and obviously times when emotionally wrestling hit me a lot harder than it does now. So, for reasons of maybe I'm growing up, or maybe it's not as good as it used to be. I don't want to be that guy who goes, oh, back in my day it was better then. Because I think there is some amazing stuff that's happening now. So don't think I'm cynical. The only thing I really hate on in wrestling is Ryback, and I stick by that. That's my gimmick, and I'm sticking to it. But yeah, that was our monthly 5. Now, we're hoping we'll have 3 people on so we can feed off a little bit more and get someone on from the Squared Circle of Trust, which is from our Patreon subscribers. Really easy to subscribe, guys, from a little as $1 a month or just a cup of coffee. I love caffeine, but I'd prefer you guys to contribute more. Head to patreon.com/fanstalk. Pledge a little, you'll get a lot in return. You'll get early access to content. You'll get, I think this one will, with this episode and episodes moving forward, you'll get that a little bit earlier. So if you're really wanting that content, for me, I'm a bus driver in real life, so not just a podcast guy. No, I listen to a lot of podcasts. So for me, as you're driving or whatever it is, it's a great tool to have. So I highly recommend it. And from a guy who managed to get a great opportunity on Fans Talk Pro Wrestling, I've now got this show. So you never know what could happen. But I know that you guys can definitely look at jumping on with me and potentially me moving forward in Fans Talk Fantasy Booking. So thank you for listening. We will see you next month. For Nick and myself, Sean, thank you for listening. Bye-bye.